Welcome to Space Engineers on the Xbox. This is the first of a three-part series looking at starting a vanilla game without mining stone by hand. Space Engineers offers three bare-bones survival start options: the space pod, the moon rover, the planetary lander. This first video will look at the space pod start. This is the easiest start in my opinion, because the space pod is made from large grid blocks, which provide a significant number of components that can be recycled and rebuilt quickly. In order to fairly measure success or failure when looking at these three different starting conditions, we will need a set of objectives that we must accomplish in order to declare success. Number 1, build a basic refinery. Number 2, build a basic assembler. Number 3, build a drill. Number 4, build an ore detector. And finally, we're going to do this using no more than one backpack load of stone, preferably less. However, in some situations, we may need that one load of stone in order to prime the pump, so to speak, to get things started in order to start breaking down the progression tree. Alright, with that out of the way, let's be about it. Okay, back in the cockpit, the first thing we're going to do is sit down in the flight seat by pressing X while the seat is highlighted. Now we'll press the View button to open the inventory screen. We'll want to grab the pistol and magazine and move them to our internal inventory so they don't fall out when we grind on the flight seat for parts. Now that we know the flight seat is empty, we can start gathering components and unlocking the progression tree to complete our objectives. Let's go ahead and grind down the flight seat. The 100 computers and 4 displays will give us a leg up on building the basic assembler later on. Unfortunately, without the flight seat, we no longer have a way to control the space pod in the event that we have to move it. Okay, we're going to need a few more parts. In this case, we're going to take them from the air vent. Don't worry, we still have a full oxygen tank, ice in the O2 H2 generator, and the survival kit is fully piped. We don't need to keep the cockpit pressurized right now. With the parts from the flight seat and the air vent, we can take a look at the progression tree. Building a landing gear or magnetic plate will unlock wheels, control seats, cockpits, and the remote control block. Let's build a landing gear. Click the left control stick to bring up the build menu. The landing gear is at the top of the selection wheel. Click the right bumper to select it. That drops us out of the build menu and back to the cockpit. Unfortunately, it defaulted to the large grid version of the landing gear, and the red bounding box tells us that it won't fit in the available space. We can switch to the small grid version by holding the left bumper, pressing the X button. Now, place the landing gear anywhere you want so long as the bounding box is green by pulling the right trigger. Pulling the left trigger gets us out of the build mode and brings the grinder up. Since we want to build the landing gear instead of grinding it down, press the direction pad to the right and switch to the welder. Now we can weld it up. You'll get an alert from the game that new blocks have been unlocked. Go ahead and grind the landing gear back down into components. We only need it to unlock the blocks in the progression tree. Let's see what we unlocked. You can see now that the second tier blocks under the landing gear are no longer grayed out, meaning that we can build them now. At this point, most people will either rebuild the flight seat or would build a remote control block and a passenger seat. Fortunately, the Warfare 2 update gives us another option: the helm control. The helm control gives us all the benefits of a control seat, except the storage capacity, and requires only 20 computers and 2 displays, which leaves us an extra 80 computers and 2 displays that we can use later on to build the basic assembler. Building the helm control has also unlocked new blocks. Let's check it out. We now have access to both atmospheric and ion thrusters, all block tools including the drill, the gyroscope, and some weapons. We're done here for now. Let's move through the ship and grab some more components. Now that the cockpit has been depressurized, we can grind down these doors and collect the components from them. We can leave the last few plates in the doors, leaving them just frames. This will help prevent us from accidentally cutting the pod in half as we recover additional components from other blocks. With the doors gone, we can grind down the 2 cover walls and the steel catwalk with 2 walls. The construction components and steel plates will come in handy later, and removing these blocks makes it easier to get around.
Inventory full.
Whoops. Looks like our inventory is just a little too full, and we've left some interior plates floating around. We can quickly empty our inventory into the cargo system by holding the left bumper and pressing the A button on our controller, while we have the cargo port highlighted in yellow. Now we can grab the interior plates so they aren't floating around. Moving to the front of the space pod, we're going to remove this window and the light armor corner block to make room for the basic refinery. While we're here, we are also going to grind down this armor slope block as well. It may not look like it, but this block is not actually connected to the ship anymore and could cause some damage if we were to try to move the ship. Now that everything's cleared out, we're ready to start building. Open the build menu and highlight the refinery near the bottom of the selection wheel. Because the first two items in this list haven't been unlocked yet, press the A button twice to highlight and select the basic refinery. We're going to place the refinery right up against the survival kit here in the front. It looks like we only have 23 steel plates in our personal inventory. That's not enough to build a basic refinery. We have all of the components that we need in our ship's inventory, but now we need to get to them. Rather than trying to remember how many computers, motors, construction components, and steel plates we need, we can use the build planner instead. Pointing our welder at the block we want to build, the basic refinery in this case, we pull the left trigger to add the required components to the build planner. We can quickly withdraw the required components from the nearby cargo port by holding the right bumper and pressing the View button while the port is highlighted in yellow. Okay, it looks like we've got everything we need but the steel plates, and we only need 7 more of those. Back here at the cargo container, we can grind these armor blocks for the missing steel plates. They are not structural and are just here to cover and protect one of the batteries. Let's finish this refinery and unlock some more blocks. Before we go look at the additional blocks we've unlocked, let's take a look at the current build state. Technically, the refinery is only at 84%. It's not complete. We're still missing the last 20 steel plates. This is okay because the refinery has reached its functional threshold. Normally, this would be the amount of damage from stray shots or errant collisions the refinery could absorb and keep functioning. However, we're taking advantage of this threshold to save on materials and time by not fully completing the block. Okay, let's check out what we unlocked by building the basic refinery. It looks like we now have access to the ore detector, full assemblers, and full refineries. Alright, with that done, we can move on to building the drill. We're going to need a lot of steel plates, 180 to be exact. The first step is to remove some of the armor cowling from around the ship. We'll start with the armor blocks around the batteries. Now, we'll move on to the cowling around the rear-facing ion thrusters. These plates are primarily decorative in nature and can be removed without impacting ship functionality. We're going to use these plates to place the drill on the front of the basic refinery. Then we're going to use the build planner to get what components we can out of the ship's inventory. Looks like we still need some steel plates, but we also need these 12 large steel tubes. Fortunately, the space pod has a number of places where we can get them. Let's go take a look at the options. The first option is the hydrogen engine. It has all 12 of the steel tubes that we need. However, it also serves as a conveyor link between the front of the ship and the cargo container. Grinding it down to the point where we get the tubes would also prevent us from moving anything from the drill to the cargo container. There's another good reason as well. If we open the control panel on the engine, we can see that it is 100% filled with 100,000 liters of hydrogen fuel. If we were to grind the engine past functional, we'd lose this fuel into space and would have to process ice into hydrogen to refill it. In my opinion, it's better to keep the hydrogen engine intact so that we can use it later. Our next option is the oxygen tank. It has a whopping 40 large steel tubes. Unfortunately, the tank suffers from similar drawbacks to the hydrogen engine. Grinding it down to the steel tubes would take it below the functional threshold and would release all of the stored O2 into space, requiring a substantial amount of ice to refill it. While the tank is in its build state, we also wouldn't be able to pass ore from the drill to the cargo container. Okay, neither of these are particularly good options for the large steel tubes we need. Fortunately, the ion thrusters have enough steel tubes for our purposes and are available without compromising the ship. From this angle, it's pretty clear that there are 3 thrusters pushing the space pod forward, but only 2 in reverse. This means that we can start moving faster than we can stop moving. A good thing if we need to run away, but we don't need to run right now, and balancing the forward and braking thrust will actually give us more control for tight maneuvers like mining. Let's go ahead and remove this middle thruster. It has 8 of the 12 steel tubes we need, and the extra steel plate and construction components won't hurt either. We'll need 2 trips to do this, as the thruster components and the large steel tubes eat up inventory space pretty quickly. Now that this ion thruster is out of the way, let's take another look at the thruster layout from a different angle. Again, we have an unbalanced thrust with 2 thrusters pushing up and only 1 thruster pushing down. Let's go ahead and salvage the steel tubes that we need from this right-hand thruster. Unlike the previous thruster, this one serves as a pretty significant contact point, connecting to 2 other thrusters, a battery, and one of the decorative ramps. Because of this, we are not going to grind it down all of the way. Even in the build state, this block is still helping to hold the ship together and will help prevent us from accidentally separating it into multiple chunks, just like we did with the doors earlier. At this point, we still need 24 plates to finish the drill. We're going to get 13 of them from this armored slope block, which we want out of the way in order to place the basic assembler. With access to the conveyor junction, this will connect the assembler to the rest of the ship inventory, allowing components, ores, and ingots to pass through the system. We'll use the matching armor block on the other side of the door for the remaining 11 steel plates. Let's weld up the drill. With the drill completed, we can move on to the basic assembler. First, we're going to grab the last of the steel plates in this sloped armor block to place on the initial frame. Because the basic assembler only has 1 conveyor port, we want to make sure that we place the block so that the port faces the conveyor junction. This will let components, ores, and ingots move freely throughout the system. Okay, let's add it to the build planner and get the rest of the components out of the ship's inventory. Looks like we're short 6 computers, 6 motors, and 58 steel plates. We're going to get the steel plates from this battery. We could also get our computers from here, but I don't like grinding the battery down any further than we need to. Those steel plates got us a lot closer to functional, but we still need the computers and the motors to really get going. Let's go to the survival kit and order up some components. With the screen highlighted yellow, hold both bumpers and press the view button to open the control panel. 1 pull on the right trigger opens the production window. From here we can order the additional computers and motors. The survival kit will not start manufacturing these until it has ingots available. We need to mine some stone for the refinery to process into ingots for the survival kit. Let's go test the helm control and move closer to the asteroid so that we can start mining. We can't start drilling until we add the drill to the toolbar. Hold the direction pad to the right until the toolbar config window opens. Press the right bumper to open the Block Tools menu, then press the A button to add the drill to the toolbar. Pressing right on the direction pad makes the drill the active weapon and ties it to the controller triggers. Pull the right trigger and move closer to the asteroid to mine stone. Let's check the survival kit and production queue. Pressing the view button on the controller brings up the inventory window. Clicking the right stick will show us all inventories on the current grid. Use the right stick to scroll down to the survival kit and we can see it's already making progress on our order. Pull the right trigger to switch to the production view and we can watch the last few motors get built. Okay, the survival kit is done building components. Let's get a big load of stone for the refinery to chew on while we finish building the basic assembler. Keep an eye on the ship's total mass to get an estimate of how much ore we've mined. Right, we're at 186,000 kilograms. That's roughly 70,000 kilograms of stone for the refinery to process. That should keep it busy for a bit while we work on other things. Let's grab what we need to finish the assembler. Done. Let's take a look at where we can place the ore detector. I see a nice spot behind the refinery. Now, in order to build the ore detector, we're going to need a pretty substantial amount of nickel to be refined from the stone to manufacture the detector components. While the refinery is working on that, let's look at rebuilding some of the space pod to make it a little more comfortable again while we wait. Since we didn't reuse the thruster components anywhere, we should be able to rebuild the ion thrusters without needing any nickel. We know how to add items to the build planner from a partially built block, but we can also add items directly from the build menu. Open the build menu, then navigate to Ship Essentials. The ion thrusters are available just to the left of bottom on the selection wheel. We're going to press the right bumper to select the ion thrusters and bring them to the recent blocks wheel. This will make them faster to select when we rebuild the center ion thruster. Reopen the build menu and add the ion thruster to the build planner by highlighting it and pressing the X button on the controller. Our build planner is pretty full. It still has the basic refinery, drill, and basic assembler, in addition to the 2 ion thrusters we just added. Normally, when you have withdrawn all the components for a block in the build planner, the block drops off the list. Because we only used enough components to build the refinery, assembler, and drill to functional levels instead of fully complete, they are still on the list. Unfortunately, we cannot selectively remove items from the build planner with a controller. We will have to remove everything else if we only want the 2 ion thrusters. Press the Y button once for each item you want to remove from the right side of the list. With the build planner clear, we can add our 2 ion thrusters back to the list. Let's get the parts for these thrusters. Okay, we don't have enough parts to finish this one. We're missing steel plates and large steel tubes. These items only use iron in their construction, so we can send them to the basic assembler to build without impacting our nickel inventory. Alright, the basic assembler is just about finished with all of the parts we need. Let's rebuild some thrusters. that done, let's turn our attention to the airlock doors and get them rebuilt as well. Uh-oh. Let's look at what we need to unlock doors in the progression tree. Doors can be unlocked in one of two ways: building a battery or a power source such as a solar panel or wind turbine. A small grid, small battery only uses 2 computers, 2 construction components, 4 steel plates, and 2 power cells. Looking at our production queue, we're already building everything except the 2 power cells for the doors. Let's add the power cells to the queue along with everything else. We've got everything that was ordered for the doors because they were in the build planner. We have to pull the 2 power cells manually because they were added directly to the production queue. Let's build this tiny battery and unlock doors in the progression tree. The easiest way to verify that the doors are unlocked is to try building them. It worked, and we unlocked some additional blocks. We're not going to worry about those right now. We have everything we need to finish our challenge. As long as we're at it, let's get an air vent in the cockpit so that we can repressurize it. Air vents haven't been unlocked yet, and they're behind the O2H2 generator. This is another trick for unlocking blocks. You don't have to build them from scratch if they already exist on your respawn pod. We can grind our O2H2 generator down past the functional line, then weld it back up right away. The game gives us credit for building it and unlocks new blocks. We have unlocked air vents, oxygen tanks, cryopods, hydrogen engines, and hydrogen tanks. Let's go ahead and add the air vent to the build planner. And the ore detector, as long as we're at it. Come back when these parts are done and we'll wrap things up. Okay, everything is ready. Let's build the ore detector first. As you can see, we have all the parts to finish building it fully. Now let's go build the air vent. With that complete, the cockpit is now pressurized and our chute is filling with oxygen. Let's get the ore detector configured. By default, its range is limited to 50% of maximum, so we want to set that to 100% to get the most usage out of it. And we can already see it's working. We're pretty close to both nickel and platinum deposits. We should still set the range on the ore detector. After we've navigated to the control panel and found the range slider on the ore detector, a quick way to move it to the max range is to hold both bumpers and press the direction pad to the right. So let's go up top. Alright, we've hit all of our targets. Build a basic refinery. Check. Build a basic assembler. Check. Build a drill. Check. Build an ore detector. Check. We didn't mine any stone by hand. Check. Before we call this done, how about a little extra credit? You probably noticed the respawn tag attached to the ship as we've flown around, as well as some warnings that this is a temporary ship when we've added blocks. While we're playing locally on our own console, there's very little risk of losing our ship, barring massive damage that takes out the survival kit. However, if we were on a server, the respawn pod will get deleted if we log off, unless it's no longer a respawn pod. We can change the nature of the space pod by using a merge block to connect it to a larger object, such as an asteroid or even an NPC encounter built with more blocks. We can see that the merge blocks are locked behind the solar panel and wind turbine. Everything else you see was unlocked when we built the small battery earlier. Let's add a couple of solar panels to the build planner and get them built up. They will be a useful addition to the back of the ship and help unlock the merge blocks. We'll order the parts up to be assembled since we know we don't have any solar cells, or girders, or bulletproof glass handy. Okay, looks like everything is done. Time to build a couple of solar panels. Putting them in the back on top of the ion thrusters is pretty convenient, and it adds a layer of protection to the exposed thrusters. That's done. Let's go ahead and add a couple of merge blocks to the build planner along with the light armor block. The light armor block will give us some extra steel plates to work with as we set up a docking arm. It doesn't matter where we build the merge block on the ship, so I'm just going to build it off the drill here. Now we're going to build a docking arm on the asteroid. This looks good. We want to make sure the arm comes out far enough from the asteroid to give us room to maneuver. The merge block is going to go on the end of the arm here. And we're done. Let's go connect the ship. All we have to do is get the merge blocks close to each other, and they will magnetically grab hold and the whole ship will shake and shimmy. Like that. Just a little more sideways thrust, and we're connected. I can try to back away, but you can see the thrusters are just flaring without doing anything. Let's grind down the docking arm and try again. Now we're not physically connected to the asteroid anymore, but we're still not moving. That's because the ship has been converted to a station. We can open the control panel and then right trigger to the info tab to fix this. Down here at the bottom, there is an option to convert to ship, which confirms that we are no longer a mobile grid. Press the X button on the controller and the option should change to convert to station, like that. Let's get out of the control panel and try moving the spacepod around. We can fly, and you'll notice that the respawn marker is no longer following us around. At this point, the ship is safe from being deleted on a server because you've logged off. Alright, I hope you found this video useful and informative. Let me know in the comments below if you thought this was helpful or hurtful, along with any other questions, concerns, or conjectures you may have. We have 2 more videos in the series, one looking at the moon rover and one looking at the planetary lander. Have a great game. We'll be back.